The afternoon sun painted golden streaks across the marble floors of the Morrison mansion when everything changed forever. Alina Rodriguez had been cleaning the grand hallway for 3 hours straight, her worn hands gripping the mop handle as sweat beaded on her forehead. She needed this job desperately. After her husband, Carlos, had died in a construction accident 2 years ago, she was raising her 8-year-old daughter, Maya, alone. The Morrison family paid well enough to keep their small apartment and put food on the table, even if the work was backbreaking and the treatment often cold. Alina had learned to keep her head down, work silently, and never, ever let Maya come near the mansion during her shifts. But on this particular Thursday afternoon, Maya's school had closed early due to a water pipe burst, and Alina had no choice but to bring her daughter along, hiding her in the servants' quarters with strict instructions to stay quiet and read her books. Maya had always been different from other children her age. While most kids complained and whined when things got tough, Maya possessed an unusual maturity, a deep understanding that their life was hard, but that her mother was doing everything she could. She had her father's warm brown eyes and his gift for finding joy in the smallest things. That afternoon, while her mother scrubbed floors in the main house, Maya heard something that pulled at her heart. It was the sound of crying, soft and muffled, coming from somewhere above. She tried to ignore it, remembering her mother's warnings. But the crying continued, growing more desperate with each passing minute. Maya closed her book, looked down the empty hallway, and made a decision that would change multiple lives forever. She quietly climbed the servants' staircase, following the sound until she reached a door slightly ajar. Peeking inside, she saw a girl about her age sitting in a wheelchair by the window, tears streaming down her pale cheeks as she stared at children playing in the park across the street. The girl in the wheelchair was Lily Morrison, the 7-year-old daughter of millionaire businessman Gregory Morrison. Lily had been paralyzed from the waist down after a horseback riding accident 18 months ago. Since then, she had become a prisoner in her own home, surrounded by the finest medical equipment money could buy, attended by private nurses, and given every material comfort imaginable. Yet she was desperately, achingly lonely. Her father, Gregory, had thrown himself into his work after the accident. Unable to bear seeing his once vibrant daughter confined to a wheelchair, he hired the best specialists, bought the most expensive therapy equipment, but he rarely spent time with Lily himself. The guilt ate at him daily, transforming him from a merely ambitious businessman into a bitter, angry man who lashed out at anyone who reminded him of his failure to protect his daughter. When Maya saw Lily crying by the window, she didn't see a rich girl in an expensive room. She saw another child in pain, and her kind heart couldn't walk away. Maya pushed the door open gently and stepped inside. Lily gasped, startled by the unexpected visitor. She had grown used to seeing only nurses, doctors, and occasionally her distant father. This girl with the warm brown eyes and gentle smile was different. Maya didn't look at her with pity or discomfort like most people did. Instead, she walked right up to the wheelchair and said simply, "Hi, I'm Maya. Why are you crying?" Lily was so surprised by the directness of the question that she actually stopped crying for a moment. No one ever asked her real questions anymore. Everyone tiptoed around her feelings, spoke in hushed tones, treated her like she was made of glass. "I'm crying because I'm alone," Lily admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I used to dance. I love dancing more than anything in the world. Now, I just sit here and watch other kids play outside." Maya tilted her head thoughtfully. Then suddenly her face lit up with an idea. "You can still dance," she declared with the confidence only a child could possess. Lily shook her head sadly. "I can't walk. How can I dance if I can't even stand up?" But Maya was already moving furniture, pushing aside a small table to create space in the center of the room. "My papa," used to tell me that dancing isn't just about your legs, Maya explained as she worked. He said, dancing is about your heart, your soul, your spirit. He said even the stars dance in the sky, and they don't have any legs at all. She returned to Lily's wheelchair and held out her hands. Come on, I'll show you. Lily hesitated, looking at this strange, wonderful girl who had appeared in her room like an angel. She hadn't felt hope in so long that she'd almost forgotten what it felt like. But something in Maya's eyes, a genuine warmth and determination, made her reach out and take those small, offered hands. Maya began to hum a simple melody, one her father used to sing to her before bedtime. She moved Lily's wheelchair gently. At first, just swaying it back and forth to the rhythm. Then she began to dance around the chair, still holding Lily's hands, encouraging her to move her arms, to sway her upper body, to feel the music. At first, Lily was stiff, afraid, but Maya's joy was infectious. Soon, Lily was laughing, really laughing, for the first time in over a year. She waved her arms, swayed to the music, and even though her legs remained still, she felt like she was flying. The two girls were so lost in their magical moment that neither heard the heavy footsteps approaching down the hallway. Maya was spinning around Lily's chair, both girls giggling uncontrollably, when the door suddenly slammed open with such force that it hit the wall. Gregory Morrison stood in the doorway, his face twisted with rage. He was a tall man, impressive in his tailored suit, with gray streaking through his dark hair and cold blue eyes that could freeze blood. He had come home early from a failed business meeting, his mood already foul, when he heard unexpected laughter coming from his daughter's room. The sight that greeted him, his paralyzed daughter playing with what was clearly the servant's child, sent him into a fury that had been building for months. "What is going on here?" he roared, his voice shaking the expensive paintings on the walls. "Get that girl away from my daughter immediately." Maya froze mid-spin, her hands still holding Lily's. The joy drained from both girls' faces like water from a broken cup. Alina, who had heard the shouting from downstairs, came running into the room, her face white with terror when she saw her daughter there. "Mr. Morrison, I'm so sorry," Alina gasped, rushing to grab Maya. She was supposed to stay in the servants' quarters. "I don't know how but Gregory cut her off with a vicious wave of his hand. I don't want to hear excuses. Your brat has no business being anywhere near my daughter. Look at her." He pointed at Maya with disgust. Dirty clothes, probably carrying diseases, filling Lily's head with false hope. "This is exactly why I hire professionals, not let random children play doctor with my daughter's condition." The words hit Maya like physical blows. She had never been spoken to with such cruelty, such naked contempt. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let go of Lily's hands. Lily, for her part, found her voice for the first time in months. "Daddy, no. Maya is my friend. She made me happy. She made me dance." But Gregory's rage only intensified at his daughter's defense of the servant's child. "Dance? You call that dancing? You're paralyzed, Lily. You'll never dance again. And I won't have some poverty-stricken child giving you false hope." The room fell silent, except for Lily's sudden, heartbroken sobs. Even Gregory seemed momentarily stunned by his own words. But his pride wouldn't let him take them back. Alina finally managed to pull Maya away from Lily, both girls crying now. "We're leaving, Mr. Morrison. I'm so sorry for the trouble." She began dragging Maya toward the door, but Gregory's cold voice stopped them. "You're not just leaving for the day, Alina. You're fired. Clear out your things and don't come back. And don't expect a reference letter either. Anyone who can't control their own child has no business working in respectable homes." Elena's knees nearly buckled. This job was everything to them. Without it, she didn't know how they would pay rent, buy food, survive. "Please, Mr. Morrison," she begged, her pride crumbling in the face of desperation. "It won't happen again. I need this job. We have nowhere else to go." But Gregory had already turned his back on them, wheeling Lily away from the scene, despite her protests and reaching arms. As Alina and Maya were escorted out by security, Maya looked back one last time. Through the window, she could see Lily. In her chair, her face pressed against the glass, tears streaming down her cheeks. Maya pressed her small hand against her heart and then held it up toward the window, a promise. Though she didn't know then what that promise would mean. That night, in their small apartment, Alina held Maya as they both cried. They had 3 weeks before rent was due, and Elena's savings would barely cover groceries for half that time. She would have to find work immediately, but without a reference from the Morrisons, who would hire her. "I'm sorry, Mama," Maya whispered into her mother's shoulder. "I just wanted to help her. She was so sad." Lena stroked her daughter's hair, her own tears falling silently. "I know, mi amor. You have a good heart. Never let anyone make you feel ashamed of that." As Maya fell asleep that night, she made a decision that would drive her for the next 20 years. She would become someone who could never be dismissed, never be looked down upon, never be powerless to help another child in pain. She didn't know how yet, but she would find a way. The next morning, while Alina began her desperate search for work, Maya went to the public library. She pulled down every book she could find about medicine, about paralysis, about the human body. The librarian, Mrs. Chen, noticed the determined little girl struggling with medical texts far beyond her grade level. "These are very advanced books, sweetheart," she said gently. "What are you looking for?" Maya looked up with those serious brown eyes and said, "I want to learn how to help children who can't walk learn to dance again." Mrs. Chen was so moved by the child's determination that she began helping Maya find age-appropriate books about the human body, about famous doctors, about medical breakthroughs. It became their daily routine while Alina job hunted. Maya would spend hours in the library, absorbing everything she could understand and even things she couldn't yet grasp but memorized anyway. Alina finally found work cleaning office buildings at night, which meant Maya had to stay with their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, most evenings. But Maya didn't mind. She did her homework diligently, helped Mrs. Patterson with small chores, and then returned to her medical books. Her teachers began to notice her exceptional dedication to science and biology. By 5th grade, she was reading at a high school level. By middle school, she was taking advanced placement courses. Through it all, she never forgot Lily Morrison or the promise she had made through that window. She carried the memory of that brief, joyful dance and the crushing humiliation that followed like a flame inside her. Not of revenge, but of determination. The years passed with struggle and sacrifice. Lena worked multiple jobs to keep them afloat, her health gradually deteriorating from the constant strain. Maya earned scholarship after scholarship, her brilliant mind and fierce dedication opening doors that money never could have. She graduated high school as valedictorian at 16, earned a full ride to university where she completed her pre-med requirements in 3 years instead of 4, and was accepted into one of the top medical schools in the country. She specialized in pediatric neurology with a focus on paralysis and mobility disorders. Every paper she wrote, every surgery she observed, every technique she mastered was driven by the image of a lonely girl in a wheelchair who just wanted to dance. During her residency, Maya became known for her innovative approaches to treating paralyzed children. She didn't just focus on the physical aspects of their conditions, but on their emotional and psychological well-being. She brought music into her treatments, incorporated dance movements for upper body mobility, and most importantly, she never told a child what they couldn't do, only helped them discover what they could. When Maya was 28, she had become Dr. Maya Rodriguez, one of the youngest department heads at the prestigious Columbia Children's Medical Center. She had developed a revolutionary treatment protocol that combined traditional neurosurgery with experimental nerve stimulation therapy, achieving unprecedented success in restoring partial or complete mobility to children with spinal injuries. Her work had been published in major medical journals, and she was regularly invited to speak at international conferences. But she never forgot where she came from or why she had chosen this path. Every month, she volunteered at free clinics in underserved communities, ensuring that children without insurance could still receive quality care. She had bought her mother a comfortable house in a nice neighborhood, though Alina was now battling the cancer that years of exposure to harsh cleaning chemicals had likely caused. "I'm so proud of you, mi amor," Alina would say during their Sunday dinners together. "You became everything that man said you could never be." One Thursday morning, Maya was reviewing patient files when her assistant knocked on her door. "Dr. Rodriguez, we have an urgent consultation request. It's a bit unusual. The patient is 27, technically outside our pediatric range, but she's been paralyzed since childhood, and her case is complicated. The family specifically requested you after reading about your experimental treatment." Kea nodded, still focused on her current files. "Send me the information. If the paralysis originated in childhood, we might be able to help." The assistant placed a folder on her desk and left. Maya finished her current review before opening the new file. The name at the top made her freeze. Lily Morrison. The room seemed to spin for a moment as 20 years collapsed into nothing. Maya read through the file with professional detachment, though her hands trembled slightly. Lily had never walked again after her childhood accident. The initial paralysis had been compounded by years of improper treatment, multiple failed surgeries, and deep psychological trauma. She was now completely paralyzed from the chest down, had attempted suicide twice, and, according to the notes, had been in severe depression for over a decade. The referral came from her primary physician, but the signature on the payment guarantee made Maya's breath catch. Gregory Morrison. Maya set down the file and walked to her window, looking out at the city skyline. She could refuse the case. She had that right. Part of her wanted to, the part that was still 8 years old, being dragged from that room while a broken girl pressed her face against the window. But then she remembered her promise, that small hand pressed against her heart, held up in a vow she hadn't fully understood at the time. This wasn't about Gregory Morrison. It had never been about him. It was about Lily, the girl who had laughed while dancing in her wheelchair for those few precious moments before the world crashed down on both of them. Maya returned to her desk and picked up her phone. "Schedule the Morrison consultation for tomorrow afternoon," she told her assistant, "and clear my calendar for the rest of the day after that. This case will require my full attention." That night, Maya barely slept. She reviewed every aspect of Lily's medical history, every failed treatment, every noted complication. The damage was extensive, far worse than it should have been. It seemed that Gregory's money had bought quantity of treatment, but not quality. Too many doctors had been afraid to tell the powerful businessman that his demands for immediate results were actually harming his daughter's chances of recovery. The next afternoon, Maya stood outside consultation room 3, taking a deep breath. Before entering, she had prepared herself for this moment, but nothing could have fully readied her for the sight that greeted her. Lily Morrison sat in a state-of-the-art wheelchair, but everything else about her spoke of defeat. Her once bright eyes were dull, her shoulders slumped, her hands lying limp in her lap. She was expensively dressed, but carelessly so, as if someone else had chosen her clothes and she couldn't bring herself to care. Beside her sat Gregory Morrison, 20 years older but still imposing, his hair now completely gray, his face lined with years of anger and regret. When Maya entered, Gregory stood immediately, extending his hand with the practiced gesture of a businessman. "Dr. Rodriguez, thank you for seeing us. I've read about your miraculous work with paralyzed children. I'm willing to pay whatever it takes." But his words died as he truly looked at her for the first time. The recognition wasn't immediate. The confident doctor before him bore little resemblance to the crying child he had thrown out of his house 2 decades ago. But something in her eyes, those same warm brown eyes that had looked at him with such hurt and determination, made him step back. "Maya." Lily's voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through the room like lightning. She was staring at the doctor with a mixture of disbelief and desperate hope. "Is it really you?" Maya moved past the stunned Gregory and knelt beside Lily's wheelchair, just as she had 20 years ago. "Hello, Lily. I told you I'd find a way to help you dance again." The tears came then from both women. Lily reached out with shaking hands to touch Maya's face, as if confirming she was real. "I looked for you," Lily sobbed. "After Father fired your mother, I tried to find you, but he wouldn't tell me anything. I never forgot you. You were the only friend I ever had who saw me as more than my wheelchair." Gregory stood frozen, his face cycling through shock, shame, and something that might have been fear. "This is impossible," he muttered. "You were just a servant's daughter." "How did you?" Maya stood slowly, turning to face him with the calm authority she had earned through 2 decades of determination. "I was never just anything, Mr. Morrison. I was a child with a dream to help other children. Your cruelty that day didn't destroy me. It forged me into who I am today." She returned her attention to Lily, her voice becoming professional but warm. "I've reviewed your files extensively. The damage is significant, but I believe my new treatment protocol could help. It won't be easy, and I can't promise you'll walk normally again. But I can promise you this: we'll find a way to make you feel alive again, to give you back some of what was taken from you." Gregory finally found his voice, though it was far from the commanding tone he once used. "Dr. Rodriguez, I need to apologize. What I did that day, what I said." But Maya held up her hand, stopping him. "Mr. Morrison, I'm not here for apologies or reconciliation. I'm here as a doctor to help a patient. However, there are conditions if I'm to take this case." She pulled out a contract she had prepared the night before. "First, you will establish a fund of $10 million for the treatment of paralyzed children whose families cannot afford care. Second, you will publicly support and fund the expansion of our experimental treatment program. Third, you will have no say in Lily's treatment plan. She is an adult and will make her own decisions. Fourth, you will attend mandatory counseling sessions to address the psychological damage your behavior has caused your daughter. These are non-negotiable." Gregory's face flushed red, his business instincts warring with his desperation. "This is extortion," he said weakly. But even as he said it, he knew he had no ground to stand on. This woman held his daughter's last hope in her hands, and they both knew it. "No, Mr. Morrison," Maya replied calmly. "This is justice. You have 24 hours to decide." She turned to Lily, her expression softening. "Regardless of what your father decides, I want you to know that I will help you. We'll find a way, with or without his money." As she moved toward the door, Lily called out, "Maya, wait." The doctor turned back. "Why?" Lily asked. "After everything he did to you and your mother, why would you help me?" Maya smiled, and for a moment she was 8 years old again, holding out her hands to a crying girl by a window. "Because 20 years ago, you reached for me when your father tried to tear us apart. You stood up for me when no one else would. And because I made a promise that day, even if I didn't fully understand it then. No child should have to stop dancing just because their legs won't work." The treatment began 2 weeks later, Gregory having agreed to all of Maya's terms. The $10 million fund was established, named after Elena Rodriguez, who is now in her final stages of cancer, but lived to see her daughter's triumph. The experimental program expansion meant that dozens of children would receive treatment, who otherwise couldn't afford it. Gregory began his counseling, finally confronting the grief and guilt that had turned him into a monster after his daughter's accident. But the real work happened in the treatment room, where Maya and Lily spent hours together. The experimental protocol involved a combination of targeted electrical stimulation, regenerative medicine, intensive physical therapy, and something Maya had added specifically for Lily, dance therapy for whatever movement she could manage. It was grueling, painful work. Lily had to relearn how to connect with her body to fight through 20 years of learned helplessness and despair. There were days when she wanted to give up, when the pain seemed too much, when progress felt impossible. But Maya was there through it all, not just as her doctor, but as the friend who had never truly left. "Do you remember the song you hummed that day?" Lily asked during one particularly difficult session. "When you danced with me in my room?" Maya smiled and began to hum the same melody her father had sung to her so many years ago. As she did, she helped Lily through the exercises, and for a moment they were children again, finding joy in movement despite everything working against them. Months passed with tiny victories and major setbacks. Lily learned to wiggle her toes, then to bend her knees slightly. Each millimeter of movement was celebrated like a miracle, because, in many ways, it was. The treatment was working better than even Maya had hoped. The combination of cutting-edge science and emotional healing, creating possibilities that neither traditional medicine nor money alone could have achieved. Gregory watched from the observation window during many sessions, seeing his daughter smile and laugh in ways he hadn't witnessed in 20 years. He saw the patience and dedication Maya showed, the same qualities he had once dismissed as worthless because they came from a servant's child. The shame of his past actions ate at him, but his therapist helped him understand that dwelling on shame without action was just another form of selfishness. So Gregory acted. He became one of the hospital's biggest donors, not just writing checks but actively participating in fundraising events. He used his business connections to bring in more funding for pediatric paralysis research. He visited the free clinics where Maya volunteered, seeing firsthand how many children suffered simply because their parents couldn't afford treatment. He met other parents who cleaned houses, worked multiple jobs, sacrificed everything for their children's health. And he finally understood the depth of his cruelty toward Alina Rodriguez. When Alina passed away, Gregory attended the funeral. Maya didn't acknowledge him, but she didn't ask him to leave either. He stood in the back, listening to speaker after speaker talk about Elena's kindness, her sacrifice, her determination to see her daughter succeed, despite every obstacle. He left a white rose on the casket, a small gesture that could never make up for the harm he had caused, but was all he could offer. 1 year into treatment, Lily stood for the first time in 20 years. It was only for 30 seconds, supported by parallel bars, but she was standing on her own legs. Maya was there, tears streaming down her face as she watched her childhood friend take this monumental step. "I'm standing, Maya," Lily cried out. "I'm really standing." But Maya's response was even better. "Now, let's see if you remember how to dance." With careful support, Maya helped Lily sway slightly to music playing in the therapy room. It wasn't much, just a gentle shifting of weight from foot to foot, but it was dancing. Lily was dancing again. The video of that moment, secretly recorded by a nurse, went viral when the hospital released it with permission. Millions watched as Dr. Maya Rodriguez helped Lily Morrison dance, knowing nothing of their history, seeing only the pure joy of a medical miracle. But those who knew the full story understood they were witnessing something far greater: the power of forgiveness, determination, and a promise kept across 20 years. The treatment continued for another year, with Lily progressing beyond anyone's wildest expectations. She would never run marathons or dance ballet, but she could walk with assistance, stand on her own for extended periods, and most importantly, she had found herself again. The depression that had consumed her for 2 decades lifted like fog in sunlight. She began advocating for other paralyzed patients, using her father's connections and her own story to raise awareness and funds. She and Maya remained close friends. Their bond forged through shared trauma and triumph, impossible to break. During Lily's final evaluation, 2 years after treatment began, she walked into Maya's office unassisted. It was slow, careful movement, but she was walking on her own. She hugged Maya tightly, both women crying again, but these were tears of joy and closure. "You kept your promise," Lily whispered. "You helped me dance again." Maya held her friend close, thinking of her mother, of that scared 8-year-old girl who had been thrown out of a mansion, of all the children she had helped since then. "We both kept our promises," she replied. "You promised to never give up, even when everything seemed hopeless. And look at you now." Gregory Morrison published a public letter in major newspapers, detailing his past cruelty and the extraordinary journey that had followed. He wrote about the servant's daughter who had become a renowned doctor, about the paralyzed girl who had learned to walk and dance again, about the price of prejudice and the power of perseverance. The letter ended with these words: "I once threw a little girl out of my house for dancing with my paralyzed daughter, believing she was beneath us. 20 years later, that same girl gave my daughter her life back. I spent decades believing money and status made me superior, but I learned that true worth comes from the heart, from dedication, from the choice to help others even when they've hurt you." Dr. Maya Rodriguez and her late mother Alina taught me that the greatest wealth is compassion, the greatest strength is forgiveness, and the greatest achievement is lifting others up, not keeping them down. The Morrison Fund for Pediatric Paralysis. Treatment has now helped over 3,000 children receive care they couldn't otherwise afford. Lily Morrison walks with a cane but travels the world as a motivational speaker, teaching others that physical limitations don't have to mean the end of dreams. She still dances differently than she once imagined, but with more joy than she ever thought possible. And Dr. Maya Rodriguez continues her work, revolutionizing treatment for paralyzed children, never forgetting that she was once just a maid's daughter who dared to believe she could make a difference. In her office hangs a simple frame with 2 photos side by side, one of 2 little girls holding hands while one sits in a wheelchair, both frozen in a moment of pure happiness before it was shattered, and another of those same 2 women, 20 years later, standing together at a medical conference where Maya was receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award for her contributions to pediatric neurology. The title of the article about that award ceremony read, "Millionaire Catches." Maid's daughter dancing with his paralyzed daughter. What he did stunned everyone. But the real story wasn't about what Gregory Morrison did that day in his cruelty. The real story was about what Maya Rodriguez did with that cruelty. She transformed it into fuel for a fire that would light the way for thousands of children to dance again, to hope again, to live again. She proved that no amount of money or status could suppress a determined spirit. And that sometimes the greatest revenge isn't revenge at all. It's rising so high that those who once looked down on you have to crane their necks to see what you've become. And in the end, it wasn't Gregory Morrison's money that saved his daughter. It was the compassion of a little girl he had once deemed worthless, grown into a woman who understood that every child deserves the chance to dance, no matter what form that dance might take.